Hello friends, this is Dr. Sumiti Ahuja and I am Assistant Professor from Faculty of Law, University of Delhi. Now one most important element of a valid contract or essential of a valid contract which is referred under, which is expressly stated under section 10 of the Indian Contract Act is requirement of lawful consideration. Yes, consideration has to be there. Yes, consideration has to be, generally has to be there from both the sides, both the parties, and consideration has to be of some value in the eyes of law. It need not be adequate, but what we are emphasizing upon here right now is the lawfulness of consideration, right? So let's see what what section 23 of the Indian Contract Act states in relation to lawful consideration. It says what considerations and objects are lawful and what not. So although it is talking about what do we mean by lawful consideration, but you will see that it is worded in a negative manner, if I may say. It is not saying that this particular thing is defined as, or it includes this thing. It says whatever will fall under any of the categories stated under section 23 will not amount to lawful consideration. Let's see what those categories are. So the provision goes on to read, the consideration or object of an agreement is lawful unless, that's why I said a negatively worded definition, it is forbidden by law. That is, the law is stopping you from acting in a particular manner. Remember in our first session, twice I had given you the example of a sharpshooter who is paid by a particular person, one of the other party, to kill someone, right? So we have previously, which was Indian Penal Code, Indian Penal Code 1860, and now we have a different act which came in 2023. Now according to which the act of killing someone, murdering someone, committing culpable homicide, amounting to murder, not amounting to murder is an offence. So that means it is forbidden by law. The law is asking you not to act in a particular manner, right? So if you are promising someone that okay, I will go and shoot the other person, that consideration from your side is not lawful. In fact, the object of that so-called contract, it's not a contract, an agreement, is unlawful. It is of such a nature that if permitted, it would defeat the provisions of any law. Here in the simplest of example you can understand is that, see, if there is a situation wherein say certain, so it's regarding some post, some recruitment, some vacancy, some qualifications are listed, right? Some requirements have been stated. Requirements are stated. Now here consider that you give that particular job, just to make you understand, I am giving this example, but you give a job to a person who is not meeting that criteria, right? Who is not meeting that criteria, you enter into a contract with that person. You try to enter into a contract with that person, but giving that person that job, keeping this thing in mind that there is already a stated criteria under which that job can be given. So you need to possess all this criteria, right? It is of such a nature, if permitted, it would defeat the provisions of law. So it would defeat the very requirement of those desired qualifications if you end up giving that contract to someone, recruiting someone who is not fulfilling the criteria. What is the point in having that criteria if you are not following it? So it's similar thing here. Then it says is fraudulent in nature. Now fraudulent, for example, there are three parties who enter into an agreement with each other saying that, see, we will commit a fraud against such and such person, and whatever amount, whatever money we are able to gain from committing that particular fraud, we will divide that particular amount between three of us. Now that is fraudulent in nature. That kind of promise being made to each other, that is not lawful, right? So So if say for example one person gets the entire amount and he refuses to share with the other two cannot approach the court of law saying that we had entered into this agreement and he has now committed a breach. Court will say it was an agreement, it was never a contract, right? In fact, here on this point, on this juncture, I would like to make this point that it is a very common saying in law and specifically in relation to court of law, that a person who is approaching the court, person who goes to court for claiming relief has to go with clean hands. So you have entered into this agreement wherein you have promised to each other that in this manner we'll go and commit a fraud against the other person and then distribute the entire amount between us. So then and when you are not getting that share of yours, you are approaching the court will say, have you come with clean hand, you yourself are the wrongdoers, right? Then it says it involves or implies injury to the person or property of another. So when we say lawful consideration, lawful object, we are not saying, I mean, it's not necessary to give the example of sharpshooter always, that is causing bodily harm, even causing harm to the property. Injury here means you are trying to cause injury or harm to the property of any person, right? That is, you got that particular, say, watch to repair, right? There was a contract between the two parties that fine, you repair this watch for me, I'll collect it from tomorrow, and in return you said fine, I'll repair the watch, but tomorrow when you come, this is the particular amount which I'll be charging from you, right? Now here consider a situation that the other person has come tomorrow. I'm not talking about the criminal point of view, we are studying it from the civil point of view. So now when that person comes to you tomorrow, you refuse to part with that watch of his, right? So that is injury to the property of that person, right? You are causing injury to the property of that person. Or say for example, I would like to modify, I think I skipped on that point, injury, the agreement, the promise which you are making to the person is in relation to injury to the property of another, right? So I gave this example of this watch which you have given for repair. Now you have given the watch for repair, and here the person says fine, there is no need to repair the watch, let me keep the watch, and there is nothing in this watch, it is just gone and I'll keep it. In fact, to make your claim look more authentic, you end up slightly destroying that, slightly causing damage to that particular watch, right? The person insists, no, it is still workable, I would like to use this watch, but what you have done, you have caused injury to his property, right? The court regards it as immoral or opposed to public policy. Here at this juncture, I would like to highlight two examples. When we say immoral, there is one example, one illustration which is given under section 23 of the Indian Contract Act, that is A, who is a father, lets his daughter to be for concubinage. Concubine means a keep. So he is giving his daughter to B as a concubine, so that B can keep the daughter of A as his keep, right? It's immoral. So he has promised to give the daughter in concubinage and the other person has promised to give money. That's immoral in nature. Because immoral reason being that it is not specifically punished under the Indian Penal Code. There is no specific punishment given under the Indian Penal Code for that. Now say it is opposed to public policy. Now public policy is a term which generally means that it is affecting masses, it is affecting public at large, right? Some policy which is in interest of the others or which affects the interest of others, right? So when we say opposed to public policy, the example which I would like to give here is that there are so many competitive exams and people do compete to get that particular post, right? And now say one of the persons here, one of the parties here promises to give a particular amount of money to the other person in order to purchase that seat, without clearing the exam or failing in the exam or whatever the situation be. He is basically purchasing that particular seat and is ready to pay an amount for it, right. So, can such a contract be valid in the eyes of law? Is it lawful? Wherein one person says, fine, I will take this much money, and you are saying, okay, fine, I will give this much money and this seat is mine, and it should not be given to anybody else, right. So, this is opposed to public policy, because public at large, everyone is not getting an equal chance to compete here, because what you did, you have actually sold that one seat to the other person, and that is incorrect in the eyes of law, and it is opposed to public policy because it is affecting the interest of public. Now, one of the most important aspects which I would like to cover here in this topic of exceptions to consideration. Now, there are threefold exceptions to consideration, and as we can see, till now we have again and again discussed that section 10 says these are the essential requirements of a valid contract, but what will be the fate of an agreement which is not fulfilling, or you can say contract in different situations, what will be the fate if any of such particular condition is not fulfilled. So, say for example, there is absence of consideration. What will happen, what will you term that agreement wherein consideration is not provided, right. Agreement without consideration is void. The provision starts with mentioning this thing, that an agreement without consideration is void in nature. Void means it has no value in the eyes of law, unless it is in writing and registered, or is a promise to compensate for something done, or is a promise to pay a debt barred by limitation law, right. Let us see what the provision says in detail now. This is section 25. Section 25 of the Indian Contract Act. Section 25 of the Indian Contract Act provides exceptions to the otherwise important requirement, that is, there is a requirement of bilateral consideration, that is, both the parties are providing something to the other party in return of their promise, right. So, that is, I am selling something to you, so you are paying for that thing to me, right. Now, when we say agreement without consideration is void, we are trying to say that it is a nudum pactum, it is a bare promise, maybe it is a one-sided promise or unilateral promise. So, that is why it is of no value in the eyes of law. It cannot be enforced as a contract in the court of law, right. Unless there is in existence any of these three instances mentioned. Let us see what these instances are, or what these exceptions are. To start with, first it deals with gift. Gift, we know, one person makes the gift to the other person. It is not necessary that the other person would be giving something in return. If someone has given a gift to me, I am not under an obligation. I may feel morally obligated that I should also do something for that person, but I am under no legal compulsion or no legal obligation to actually return something to that person for that gift which has been given to me. Now, first exception under section 25 is dealing with a gift made out of natural love and affection. So, if one person has given a gift to another person out of natural love and affection and fulfilling the conditions mentioned under subsection 1 of section 25, it can be a valid contract. It says it is expressed in writing. That means that gift has to be in writing form and registered under the law for timing in force. In India, we do have a registration act which tells about the procedure and the requirements for registering of legal documents, right. So, it says if you want to, or if you wish to treat a gift as a part of the contract or as a valid contract, then these conditions have to be fulfilled. It has to be in writing, that gift has to be made in writing, it has to be registered under the Registration Act, and is made on account of natural love and affection and it is to be between the parties standing in a near relation to each other, not a person who is just crossing the road, not a passerby, not a stranger. It says 4 things. It has to be in writing, gift has to be in writing, it has to be registered, then it says it has to be made out of natural love and affection. You have that natural love and affection towards someone, and you are willing to do something for that person, gift something to that person, right? And the 4th thing is that the gift is to be made to someone who stands in near relation to you, who is related to you, right? And coming to the second subsection now. So first subsection we just studied that it deals with gift made out of natural love and affection. Then the second subsection is dealing with what we call past voluntary services. You need to distinguish past voluntary services from past consideration, right? You need to understand that there is a difference between past consideration and past voluntary services. Let's see what the difference between the two is. Past consideration, we just studied, we just read that past consideration means something which has already been done, and now later on you are providing consideration for that, right? So something has already been done, consideration from one party has already been provided to you, and now you are fulfilling your part of the obligation. Now let's see what past voluntary service is and how is it different from past consideration. It says past voluntary services, it is a promise to compensate wholly or in part a person who has already voluntarily, remember the definition of consideration starts with at the desire of the promisor you have done something for that person. Now here we are saying that this person has done something voluntarily without being asked to act in a particular manner. Out of gratitude you can say that person has done something for the promisor or something which the promisor was legally compellable to do. Now when we say past voluntary service means, say for example, I found someone's purse or someone's wallet lying in a particular room, right, or lying somewhere on the road, and I was able to identify to whom it belonged, and I quickly went to that person, or I made an effort of and found out the details of that person and contacted that person and returned that wallet or that purse to that person. After getting that person, before I proceed ahead, that person did not ask me to look for that purse, to go out and search for that purse. It is not Lalman Shukla versus Gauri Dutt, wherein the servant of that person has under a duty, under a legal obligation had gone out in search of that missing nephew of his employer, right. Here what we are saying, past voluntary service means you did something for somebody voluntarily out of your own free will. You felt like doing that and you did that for that person. Now if you have done that, later on when I return that purse to that person out of gratitude, he promises now that he will be, because I did this for that person, so now that person promises that I will pay for your kind act, kind gesture, I promise to pay say 10,000 rupees to you, right. What happens if he later commits a default in doing that? Now past voluntary services says, past voluntary service done, and you have promised that person that you will be compensating that person for that past voluntary service, you are under obligation now. That person can take you to the court because it is an exception to consideration, right. Promise to compensate wholly or in part a person who has already voluntarily done something for the promisor or something which promisor was legally compellable to do. So this is the difference between past consideration and past voluntary service. Past consideration, at the desire of the promisor you had acted in a particular manner previously and now he does something for you. past voluntary service, a person out of his own free will voluntarily did something for you, and now later on you promised that I will be suitably compensating you for that gesture. So if you have promised to compensate for that gesture, you are under a legal obligation now. That is what the subsection 2 or the exception 2 to section 25 highlights. Now the third exception or the last exception to consideration to the requirement, mandatory requirement of consideration under section 25, it is dealing with what we call as time barred debt. Time barred debt. It says it is a promise made in writing and signed by the person to be charged therewith, or by his agent generally or specially authorized in that behalf, to pay wholly or in part a debt of which the creditor might have enforced payment, but for the law for the limitation of suits. So in order to understand this example, this particular exception, we first need to understand what is the meaning of limitation. In India, there is a law known as the Limitation Act. Now the purpose of Limitation Act is to tell you that say for example, if someone has taken a loan from you and has promised to return that loan to you, everything is in written, and commits a default. Now say for example, now Limitation Act provides a schedule or it provides a list which says if a particular act happens or if a particular wrong has happened, then in that case limitation period for going to the court and claiming remedy is as follows. So different time period for different types of acts. Now here it means, say for example I took a loan from someone, I committed a default. Now the Limitation Act, say for example, says the day the cause of action arose, that is the day that person refused to return that, the day I refused to return that debt to the other party, then in that situation the limitation period starts running. That is, say for example 1 year is the limitation period. So within that 1 year period, the other person has to approach the court and claim that repayment of the debt. If the person fails to go to the court, then what will happen? If the person fails to go to the court timely, the person may not get the relief. If the person fails to get relief, legal remedy has come to an end. But there also is a rider. That rider is that now say for example 1 year had passed and the person from whom I had taken that loan, the creditor, he was not able to approach the court. But I thought it's okay, so I again give it in written. Maybe I had taken a lakh of rupees from that person. Now after expiry of the limitation period, I give a promise in written stating that I promise to pay you say 50,000 rupees in lieu of that 1 lakh debt by such and such date. Now here say for example again I commit that default despite that I had promised again, I committed default. Now that person cannot say, now I cannot say that there was no promise from your side, there was only one-sided consideration. No, not at all. It's a time barred debt. Even if one-sided consideration, but the subsection 3 to section 25 makes it to be a good consideration and a valid contract. That is, if I am later on giving it in writing in promise, I am promising that I agree or I promise to repay that time barred debt, I am under an obligation. The only difference will be that now if I commit default, I can only be asked by the court to give that 50,000 rupees which I had promised at a later stage and not that 1 lakh which had been promised initially, right. Now there are two exceptions to this particular section 25, two explanations, sorry. The purpose of the explanation is only to provide further clarity to the operational part of any provision. So the explanations are as follows. First is, nothing in this section shall affect the validity as between the donor and donee of any gift actually made. This is dealing with first subsection. the next explanation states, an agreement to which the consent of the promisor is freely given is not void merely because of consideration is inadequate. I had just told you in the beginning of this presentation that although consideration, lawful consideration is a valid requirement of, is an important requirement of a valid contract, but consideration need not be adequate, right. With this, I finished this session. Thank you all.